So I was out of town. I was at a Steelers game.
Steelers game. Y'all bit the dust.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got our butts handed to them, but still, great experience.
Yes.
Great experience. It was just all around eye-opening. I've never been a Steelers fan all my life. Never seen a Steelers game.
Yeah.
So it was just all of it.
Good.
Just entire weekend.
Great
of
experience.
And you guys pulled off the first funeral this past weekend that was actually in our building.
Yes.
And and that lets us jump in. What's interesting is we get people can ask questions just about whatever they want in this context, and it doesn't mean we have to answer them. But they can, and so both of the questions that we have to do with cultural issues. And so let me take this one because we'll just go with that. It says, I went to Brenda's funeral on Saturday, which is the funeral that we had on Saturday. Can we talk about black funerals versus white funerals? Because the black funeral, this is what they said, the black funeral seems to be more of a celebration than I'm used to. So it assumes this is a white person asking the question. So let's talk about the cultural differences between funerals.
In the minority community, especially people of faith, we refer to funerals as homegoing celebrations. Biblically speaking, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So it's not that we don't mourn, but in the midst of mourning, we don't mourn as those who have no hope. So biblically speaking, those are the scripture foundations that we build those things on. The Bible says, blessed are they which die in the Lord, for they rest from their labor. It's a blessing for a believer to transition from this life to the next life. And so it's not that we tell people not to cry, not to mourn, but in the midst of your mourning, we still have faith that we know where our loved one has gone.
Right.
So it's a more of a celebratory situation than just a sad situation.
And I've seen that as well. Having been to a plethora, of course, white funerals and a smattering now of African American funerals, it is definitely it's the same elements.
Yes.
Right. Same elements to the funeral, but but I think it's more. I would say it's more of an extension of the church cultures. Even in general, generally, I'm generalizing here, but generally in the African American culture, there seems to be more of a focus on the victory that we have in Jesus and the celebration in that context, and even in the church cultures, there's a more somberness. That's not a bad thing, but there's more somberness in the white communities, at least that I grew up in. And I think a lot of our people have. And then in the African American church, there's more of a celebration and a focus on victory. So I think that extends out to the funerals, to that. And so, of the smattering of African American funerals I've been to, it really is more, I leave encouraged, I leave equipped, I leave more excited about Jesus, and I think that's just an extension of culture, you know?
A lot of the black experiences when it comes to funerals, there's a message of hope, and sometimes, depending on the situation, there's a message of invitation.
Right.
Because some people in our community, in the black community, that might be the only time they're going to go to church, is to honor their loved one.
Right.
So here is an opportunity for them to hear the gospel. So even in the eulogy, in some situations, a eulogy is just to speak well about that person.
Right.
But in our experience, it's more than just speaking well about that person. It's lifting up the gospel to move towards a place of hope, but a place of also making a decision.
That's really, really great.
Yeah.
You know, and I do want to emphasize in the differences, because we're talking about cultural differences here, and I want to emphasize that, like, we're talking about cultural differences. I went to a church, and I told you about this. I went to a church probably about a little while ago. Doesn't matter. A little while ago, and it was a lot like it was a very white church, and it was very like the churches that I grew up in. And I was struck by two things. I was struck by, and we've talked about this, but I was struck by how far I'm divorced from, or I've moved from that type of church experience that I grew up in.
Right.
And for me, it was kind of a remembrance of, wow, this is kind of, it was very somber, it was very quiet. People, when I grew up in church, I was expected, when the preacher preached, I was expected not to talk.
Right.
Right. So in African American churches, it's a back and forth.
Right.
No. In white churches, you don't speak.
Right.
You, in the church I was raised in, you didn't raise your hands, and it wasn't like, oh, raising your hand is bad. You just didn't.
Just wasn't the climate or the condition for that.
So you went to church, and you. I don't know how to say, you partook of what they gave you, but you didn't participate in what they gave you.
Good words.
Other than intellectually and with your heart and things like that. But you were expected to kind of sit there, be quiet, make sure your kids don't make any noise, and then you leave. Whereas even in our church, Grace United today, especially in African American culture in general, from beginning to end, it's a participatory thing. You're expected to speak. You're expected to talk back. You're expected to raise your hand, whatever the case may be. And I love that about Grace United, that I feel like our services are from beginning to end, even from before the service, because our worship team starts before the countdown ends, is from beginning to end, you're expected to participate. But my point to this is, in coming to funerals, like, you are expected, in the churches I grew, in the white churches, you're expected to sit there, be quiet, be very somber, it's a very holy moment, it's a very holy place, so therefore that requires a somberness. And I think that extends to our funerals as well. Our funerals are a reflection of that. And it's not a good thing or a bad thing, but it is reality. And I say that for two reasons on camera here, both for the white person that's like, it's like, I feel attacked or I feel uncomfortable in these type of movements, and you're asking me to not be who I grew up to be. But also for the African Americans that are watching, to say, a lot of the white people that are in our congregation, for them, the verbosity and the robustness of our worship services are a far move for them. Whereas you would say, over the past couple of years, you've backed up some from the robustness to make those accommodations. So not only in church, but in funerals, we're making those accommodations to make sure this works.
Yes, yeah. It's like, we've gone back and forth. Legally, we call this a merge, but spiritually, we call this a marriage. Right. And anytime someone goes into a marriage, it's give and take. No individual needs to say, I want everything my way. That's not loving a person. Right. That's dictatorship. And so, you probably was at one extreme, and I was in the black community way on the other end, Pentecostal, Church of God in Christ. Right. And so when you look at what we do on a Sunday morning based on how I was raised, it's real downplayed. It's real downplayed. But I think it's the best for what God has called this to be. I
mean, we're doing the Apostles' Creed.
Yes,
We're doing communion every week. A lot of those things. And on our end, it's again, like, you're expected to talk when we preach. Like, I'll call it. We'll be like, hey, y'all aren't talking enough. Y'all need to talk more. Yeah. You need to get up. You need to, those type of things.
Yeah. But I think God is allowing this to happen in such an amazing way, that it is creating a whole new culture here that's drawing people all over this city that are coming and like, wow, this is different. Yeah. So I believe there's such a uniqueness about what's going on because of our total different backgrounds as the two leaders here, total different background, but for the sake of what God has called this to be, we're making the necessary sacrifices and adjustments for this thing to flourish and to be fruitful.
And we've said this, but I think it helps to say it over and over again, because I think what we're trying to do is not get rid of our backgrounds and create this weird third culture. We're trying to celebrate both at the same time and keep what's beautiful about both and have them in one place, which is not the easiest thing to do.
Oh, no.
But it is creating a beautiful third culture with space people can walk into.
And anyone who's ever been married, everybody will say marriage is work.
Absolutely.
It's work, you know. And so the same is with this right here. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of communication, you know, so that we can make sure that we're saying the same thing and meaning the same thing. So let's flow this into the second cultural question that they asked about. And I'll read it and then we'll comment on it. It says, can you talk about church anniversaries, question mark? Because this isn't normal in white culture, but it seems to be. And so these are white people asking the question. Welcome to White Person Question Hour. This isn't normal in white culture, but it seems to be in black culture. Can you talk about why and what it involves? So I'll set you up and you can bat it out of the park. Because in white culture, it's just not, at least from my experience, customary. I mean, it's just, I couldn't even tell you before we started. So, you know, Legacy Grace Temple, Legacy Grace Church, now Grace United. We don't know. I can tell you what the church anniversary date was for Grace Church. Had no idea. You know, the only anniversary when we paid off the building, y'all had a celebration.
We had a party.
Yes.
But you know, it's like not knowing a birthday. Like I don't really know what day it was because it just wasn't a thing. You know. So, but for y'all, it's a thing.
Yeah. Michael Belote said something.
Who?
Michael Belote.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
You don't know who that is? Little guy walks around here all the time. 49er fan.
We just went on a trip together. We're good.
Yeah, 49er fan. But he said something about 3 years ago when we were having a similar conversation about celebrating, praise, worship. You know, he says, if you've always had, it's no big deal to celebrate something that you've always had.
Okay.
Well, most minorities have not always had. So when we do have, it's something of significance for us to celebrate. For years, slave owners didn't allow blacks to worship or to have church. So when that privilege came to have church, we're 1 year old. Let's celebrate. We're 5 years old. Let's celebrate because it was a privilege that we, you know, did not take for granted. And even now, you know, when we look at the fourth Sunday in September, a year ago, that's when this marriage happened. And it's something to celebrate, you know. Even for myself in the ministry for 40 years, I celebrated 41 years last week, on September the 7th. That's significant, you know, because it hadn't been easy. We can celebrate what God has done here because it hadn't been a cakewalk, but it's been great.
It's been great.
It's been great.
So let me follow up on that because another thing that is at least different in my experience is, so on our church anniversary,
we're bringing people in.
I'm not preaching. You're not preaching. So is that cultural? Like, where is it?
It's culture.
How does that function?
I think that it is. You have some white churches that do this right here that are more in the vein of Pentecostal and stuff like that, because to me it's an opportunity for us as pastors, as leaders, to sit back and to be fed and to celebrate with the rest of our congregation. But it's also an opportunity to bring someone else in for them to hear another voice.
That's good.
It's exposure.
Right.
You know, because sometimes they can get so, our voices can get so common.
Right.
That at some point we become wah, 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 wah. But then when someone else comes in, they're like, wow.
Says the same thing. Just like being a parent.
Yes.
Teacher says the same thing.
Yes.
And suddenly your kid hears it. You're like, I've been saying that thing for 6 months.
Yeah. And even sometimes it's that, but then sometimes it's something else. Sometimes a whole new revelation comes that blesses the congregation, that wasn't revealed to me or you.
Right.
And the congregation like, wow, that was good. That was good, you know. And we sitting back like, yeah, that was real good. That was really good, you know. And so it's a win-win.
Right.
And you know, I am so honored to have the two giants that's going to be here next week. I mean, the fourth Sunday, you know, I get caught up, man, when I get to talking about
I get it.
These two, you know, Rex Hohen, formerly the pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church that moved them from the historical location downtown to out here in West Little Rock, you know, right off of 430, that big church, Emmanuel Baptist Church. It was up under his leadership that happened. And a few years after he did that, he retired and moved to Ouachita Baptist College, you know, in Arkadelphia. You know, that's the college of colleges for us, the Baptist denomination, and led that school. And he's just an amazing guy. You know, he's been in my life for such a long time. I refer to him as my big brother. And then the other guy, that other guy who's on John Barrow now, a guy named Maurice Watson, you know, who led me to Christ, just a giant of a preacher that has traveled the length and breadth of this world preaching the gospel. Just 2 weeks ago was in South Africa preaching. You know, he'll be here for the second service. And so once again, we're bringing two cultures. You know, white guy Rex at 9 o'clock, black guy, is he black? Yeah, he's black. At 10:30, Dr. Maurice Watson.
Things bishops can say that I can't say.
Yeah, you can't get away with
I can't
it, you know. But it's going to be an exciting Sunday, and then that Saturday, leading up to it, we're going to have a great time.
Massive
Tell them about
party.
Saturday. Tell them about Saturday.
So I've heard there's going to be horses.
Yeah.
Heard there's going to be bounce houses. Heard, like, it's going to be an snow cones. It's going to be great. We're going to have on Sunday. We're going to have that picture. You know, get your picture taken. It's going to be like we're going to be tired on Monday.
Yeah.
Like you and I are.
I'm taking off on Monday.
Yeah, we need to take a day off.
Yeah, I'm taking off on Monday. Yeah. Why are we taking off? We're not preaching.
Oh, because you're preaching?
I'm not preaching that Monday, that Sunday. That's church anniversary.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's good. No, I'm just, because I need the time off. All right.
You need the time
off. Well, that's Grace Unfiltered. Listen, okay, so the 23rd, Saturday the 23rd, you need to make sure that you have in your plans to be here for the great picnic that we're going to have. It's
from 11 until 2.
11 to 2. And then Sunday, I'd love to invite you to both services, but we don't have room for you. So pick a service, any service. Go to the first, watch the second online. Go to the second, watch the first online. It's going to be great. But get here, I'm just letting you know, on the 24th, get here early if you want to get a seat, because they're going to have a little standing room only action at both services. There's nothing we can do about it. We can only fit so many people in our building. So love you guys. If you have any questions, go to graceunitedlr.com, and you'll be able to get all the information you need from there. And love you, Cynthia. Bye.
Bye-bye.